everyone, my name is Cassie and I hoard classical monologues like I'm some kind of drama dragon. Seriously, there was one point where it was getting really rather out of control. So here we are again. I'm back on my sofa, sat next to a pile of plays that I'm going to hold up and tell you what monologue I did from it. Unlike last week, we are going to be looking at the classical monologues that I did. Now, I'm saying classical and not Shakespeare because there are in fact some monologues in here that were not written by Shakespeare. Okay, one. There's one non-Shakespeare monologue. If you are new here and you don't know what on earth I am talking about, first of all, hello, welcome. I'll give you a little bit of a recap. In my late teens and early 20s, I auditioned for drama schools for 4 years, and for each audition I had to have at least one contemporary monologue and one classical monologue. Except in my last year auditioning at Royal Welsh, I think you've got to do 2 contemporaries in your first round now. I think it's changed slightly. Regardless, last week I took you through the contemporary monologues that I did. If you missed that video, there is a link to it in the description. Go watch it after you've watched this. And I will be taking you through this week the classical monologues that I did. I'll take you through the play, the character, the act and scene, and most importantly, whether I thought it was a good pick for me and whether I would still take it to a monologue, still take it to an audition. Sorry, I've gone a little bit crazy. Still take it to an audition now. So let's get started because we've got rather a lot to get through. So let's start with my first year auditioning when I was 18. This year I had one contemporary monologue and one classical monologue. The classical monologue that I had for this year was I Left No Ring with Her from the play Twelfth Night. Now, as I alluded to in my last vlog with 2 of my contemporary speeches, there is always at least one speech that everyone and their dog's mother is doing. This is particularly true with classical speeches. There's hardly any sort of logic to it, so you've just kind of got to keep your ear to the ground and cross your fingers and hope that you have managed to avoid it. I even remember making a joke in one of my auditions that they'd probably heard this speech rather, at least 3 times that day, because I was very, very aware that in 2014 to 2015, every teenage girl anyway, was doing this speech. Do I think it was a good choice for me? Sure. Yeah. But then I also think that Viola is such a forgiving part, and this is such a forgiving monologue that I think most people can do it and do it pretty well. I mean, if you are not very confident with Shakespeare, or this is your first time doing a classical text, then this is a fantastic starting point and you should absolutely have a look at it. But you know, there are definitely better pieces out there, so I'd say start with this, see how you get on, then move on to more exciting stuff because God, I definitely have. So let's move on to my second year auditioning when I was 19. So for this year I had one contemporary monologue and 3 classical monologues. Now, my first classical monologue was And Why I Pray You from As You Like It. I momentarily forgot the play and the speech, so let that just foreshadow what I'm about to tell you. when looking for monologues, I came across this one quite easily. I literally just picked it off the list of speeches that Central School of Speech and Drama had posted on their website. I think it's slightly different now, but when I was auditioning, they had their list, and you had to choose 2 monologues from that list. Like, no deviation. Boom. There we go. I cannot, however, tell you why I chose this monologue. I didn't particularly know the play. I still don't really know the play. I don't even think I particularly liked the speech. I certainly can't remember working on it. There are so few notes here. So clearly I didn't work on it that much. The only thing that I really remember was that in one audition I just straight up forgot my lines, and in another audition the fire bell was tested halfway through and I had to start again. I mean, God knows why anyone recalled me for this, 'cause it's a mystery for me. I probably only chose this because it was from a comedy and my contemporary of that year was so serious. If it's not already clear, I don't feel like it was a monologue I should have done in the first place, so I probably wouldn't do it now. God, it was a mistake. So my second monologue for that year was "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt" from Hamlet. Now, technically I had already prepared this one when I was 18 for my previous year's auditions, but that was just in case Central recalled me. They didn't that first year, but they did my second year. They did my second year auditioning, so I actually got to do it, which was really very exciting. So just a quick side note, because this isn't the only male monologue that's on the list. When you're doing drama school auditions, gender, and you're doing speeches, gender does not matter, especially with classical speeches, right? If you're a woman and you want to have a go at some Benedict, go for it. If you are a man and you want to have a crack at some Juliet, why not? The important thing is that you vibe with the monologue and the character. What it says about me that I vibe with Hamlet, I don't know. That is possibly something for me to explore in therapy. But anyway, this speech was a good pick for me for one reason alone, and that was that I just bloody loved it. I really liked this speech, and I constantly wanted to be working on it. Honestly, I wish that I had done it more, but if I wanted to do it more, I'd have had to pick something cheerier to pair it with than my contemporary of that year, which was the Gut Girls. So, like I say, I wish I'd have done it more, because I think it really suited me, and hell yeah, I would still do it now. I mean, who doesn't want to be the Prince of Denmark? My third and final monologue for that year was "First, Let Me Tell You Who You Have Condemned" from Henry VI, Part 1. Shakespeare's history plays are massively underrated and underutilised, maybe with the exception of Margaret of Anjou. Like, there's some genuinely brilliant, lovely stuff in his Shakespeare plays. Not Shakespeare plays, in his history plays. What am I talking about? My brain is not working today. In his history plays. And they are definitely worth taking a look at. So, like Hamlet, I only took this to the one audition. I took this to my GSA Acting Foundation audition. I don't know why I didn't take it to auditions the following year, but I took it to that one. And with hindsight, I genuinely believe that it was this monologue that got me my place. So, She was the first character that I had played who was so sure of herself and in herself and so confident in what she was doing. And it was just such a departure from who I was as a teenager, which is why it was such a brilliant pick for me, other than the fact that I just really enjoyed doing it. One of the panel on the audition later told me that he was fascinated by me in the audition because I could act a character that just oozed confidence and self-assurity. But when I was just myself, I looked like I wanted to hide. I genuinely regret not taking this monologue to more auditions, and I would definitely take it to an audition now. So now we move on to my year at GSA when I was 20. This was my monologue hoarding year, but ultimately I had 2 contemporary monologues and 3 classical monologues. So my lead monologue for that year, my most often used, was I Pray You Tarry from The Merchant of Venice. This was the first comedy piece that I actually enjoyed working on, possibly because it was branching out from ha ha, funny girl dressed as boy and girl falls in love with her, oh funny ha ha, and because I could actually see a lot of myself in Portia. So in this monologue, Portia is trying to convince a guy that she likes not to pick a box, because if he picks that box and he picks the wrong box, then he will have to leave her. It does make sense in the context of the play. I understand that it sounds weird at the moment, but in the context of the play it does make sense. She is incredibly poetic and eloquent, as any Shakespearean heroine should be, but she's also really, really not, at least when I play her. She just has this sort of beautiful awkwardness to her. She doesn't really especially know what she wants, except that this is the first suitor that has come that she actually kind of likes, and she doesn't want to risk losing time with him yet. There's also this really gorgeous moment where she looks into his eyes and just completely loses her train of thought. I think this was a really, really strong monologue for me back then, and if it's not already clear, I really, really enjoyed working on it. I would still use this monologue for an audition. In fact, out of all of the monologues that I've talked about and the ones that I'm going to talk about, this is the only monologue that I have actually used for an audition post-uni. My second monologue is the only non-Shakespeare speech from my list. This was What Have I Gained by Thee But Infamy from The White Devil by John Webster. I think I only did this for 2 auditions because at the time it felt like it was very similar to my contemporary monologues, especially Girls Like That. But looking back on it with hindsight, I'm not really sure that it was. I don't really remember much about this speech. I think I only really chose it because I wanted to branch out a little bit from Shakespeare and be a little bit different. Which isn't always a bad thing. I also really liked the spikiness in this monologue. It was really, really, really fun to do. I think it was an alright choice. It wasn't a bad choice. It certainly wasn't a bad choice, like some of the other speeches that I've mentioned. But it also wasn't great. I think one of the other reasons why I stopped doing it was because I suddenly realised that I wasn't vibing with it in the way that I used to. And ditching a monologue because you're not vibing with it is always a good decision. Having said all that, it is a very good monologue, and I think if the opportunity arose to revive it, I would, because I think with the understanding of relationships and life that I have now, I think it would really, really work for me. The monologue that I brought in to replace Vittoria was "'Tis Torture and Not Mercy" from Romeo and Juliet. I mean, yeah, it's not the most famous speech from this play, but that's only because this play is full of absolute bangers. I mean, you know, sometimes things are cliche for a reason, because they're really, really good. There's not really a huge amount to say for this one. This was the last speech that I chose for this year, and it was actually one that I've been toying with doing for a really, really, really long time at this point, like years. I think that was a very good choice for me because I could tap into a lot of emotion in the same way that I did for Girls Like That, and it was a really, really good contrasting piece for Rotterdam. Because it was quite similar to Girls Like That, and I mean, like, actually similar, not in the way that I thought The White Devil was similar, which it really wasn't. I could only do this if I paired it with a different contemporary, but when I did do it, on the few rare occasions when I could do it, I really, really, really enjoyed it. I do still think that for the right audition, this would be a good fit for me. So now we move on to my final year auditioning when I was 21. This year I had 2 contemporary speeches and 1 classical speech. So following a parting piece of advice from one of my tutors at GSA, which was simply, you need to play more queens, my last monologue was "Sir, spare your threats" from A Winter's Tale. And my God, what a way to end. This is such a brilliant speech. I mean, I've done great speeches over the years, but this is genuinely, I think, genuinely my favourite. Hermione is going through such a traumatic time, a time that would have anyone else just curled up on the floor, like hugging their knees, but she doesn't do any of that. She presents herself with such strength and such dignity. I cannot say that I do that. I wish that I could say that in my own life I presented myself like that when things go wrong. I definitely don't. But, oh, it's just such a brilliant monologue. And even though Hermione and I are nothing alike, I think this is a really, really good pick for me. Because, once again, this is Hermione's time to speak. She's got the floor and no one, not even her husband, the king, is going to take it from her. And those are the kinds of speeches that I do really, really well. Like I say, it's an absolutely brilliant choice for me, and I still think it is a good choice for me. And it's one that I would do again. I think it's one that I'm going to be keeping hold of for future use for quite some years to come. So that's everything. All my contemporary and classical monologues. For those not keeping count, that's 14 monologues altogether. God, I used to do a lot of monologues, didn't I? I definitely prefer doing classical monologues. I don't know why. I don't know why I prefer it. I just really, really, really love them. It's probably because I'm a Shakespeare nerd. It is definitely because I'm a Shakespeare nerd. Next week, I am being joined by two of my friends that I met at GSA, and we're going to be talking about their experiences at auditions and at drama school. So if you're interested in that, and honestly, why wouldn't you be, then come back here next Friday at 4 p.m. Until then, like, comment and subscribe, and I hope you all have a lovely week.